same touch in the scene. We're introduced to Malcolm, our drunk, who fought in World War I. He is given a little tiny plane to fix by the little girl. I got the alcoholic shakes, and pops the wheel off. That's what flies in her suit and splashes on her.
Right.
And then, of course, later Malcolm gets behind the wheel of a real plane. So it's a nice little setup. Gets paid off later.
Yeah.
We're introduced to Timothy Dalton's character, right? The very first scene with him actually is him bossing around Paul Sorvino, Valentine, Eddie Valentine, the mob boss.
A rocket?
Yeah.
Kind of saying, well, get me my rocket, you know, and what's a movie star want with a rocket anyway? Paul Sorvino's just hired muscle.
Yeah.
But that's our first scene to Neville Sinclair, but the real important scene is when Jenny is on set.
Prepare to die that we may learn the identity of the Laughing Bandit.
Why wait?
Good heavens, it's a regular.
None other.
Which also includes one of my favorite lines ever, which I still quote to today. And it's acting is acting like you're not acting.
Acting is acting like you're not acting. So act, but don't act like you're acting, get it?
All right.
Why don't we try that?
That's the best way the director could explain it to the ditzy lady.
Oh, my prince, with that you drink of my lips as deeply.
Cut, cut, cut.
Who got the part over Jenny, who was much better.
Yes,
But they're making
Idiot!
Yeah, well, PV and Cliff, they discover in the plane, in the old crop dusting plane, that they have to use now the rocket, the magical rocket, and there's just some the fun scenes, like kind of like in Iron Man 1. Like the best part of Iron Man is Iron Man building the suit.
And 3, 2, 1.
And you have those scenes kind of in here where they like just experiment with the rocket. Like, what the fuck is this thing? What does it do? And they like hit buttons and then, oh my god!
I see any moving parts. I wouldn't touch that if I were you.
And then they figure out it's a rocket. So they actually steal a statue of Charles Lindbergh to test it out on.
Well, that's always my favorite part of a superhero origin movie is testing and learning of power.
Yeah.
falling off the buildings and trying to use his webs, and he's not quite sure what he's doing. And then it all culminates in that very first big action scene when that superhero is forced to go into action and use the powers. And they're quite there yet, and that's thrilling part for the audience. And then, we're gonna need a helmet. Then Peavy discovers that he needs to put a fin on the helmet for direction change.
How do I look?
Like a hood ornament.
But that helmet is just the most perfect Art Deco thing in existence.
And that's a whole nother topic, is Rich and I have a love for Art Deco.
I do. I have an unnatural love for Art Deco.
At the end, they end up at Griffith Observatory, which is Art Deco paradise as well.
Well, you tell us the magic, the screenplay magic about page 10.
Page 10, typically a script is a minute per page on average. And then so you got 10 minutes, 10 pages to kind of set everything up. Your location, your characters, what's going on, how things are, your tone, what kind of movie is this, and then there's a turning point when something happens that kind of sets everything off.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, discovering the rocket. And then there's, your plot points. And then your acts, basically, things get worse, your lowest act, your lowest point.
Look, they got my girl.
Oh, God, Cliff, no.
Yeah, they set up a rendezvous. They want to swap Jenny for the rocket.
And then kind of a plan to win the day at the end. Usually there's a period of things compounding and discovery, which is Cliff's relationship with Jenny. They have a fight.
They're at a crossroads.
They're at a crossroads. And then we have expanding villains. We get a little taste of some conflict in the beginning with the FBI guys chasing the mob. You know something's amiss. But then we discover there's a Hollywood movie star involved.
It's Neville Sinclair. What? It's Neville Sinclair.
But basically, we get the fact that Neville Sinclair wants the rocket, and nobody really knows why. And then, of course, later on in the film, spoilers, if you want to watch, The Rocketeer, Neville Sinclair is a secret Nazi. So then we introduce a third set of villains. There's a lot of players in this movie.
Just the whole scene where we discover he's a Nazi, that is just the best payoff for Jenny's character. She wants to be the big Hollywood actress. She wants to play a scene with the big actor, Neville Sinclair. I auditioned for that part. And that whole scene with them, they're both acting. She finally gets her scene with the big actor.
And she literally says that.
Yeah.
I finally played a scene with Neville Sinclair.
They didn't need to hit us over the head, but it was there.
That's funny you mention that, because there's a lot of hitting over the head for things.
It's funny how just kind of getting clumsily hit with a vase will knock a grown adult.
And she does it so nonchalantly. It's like almost like, yeah, this is the part where she knocks him out. And then Jenny hits Frankenstein over the head with the very thing that he hung his hat on with earlier.
At the same time, you get that wonderful scene with Howard Hughes, played by Terry O'Quinn, and that great little Nazi propaganda film.
Yes.
Go ahead, roll it.
Which I have no idea why the Nazis bothered making it, but it's a wonderful little bit of information that lets you know what the stakes are.
And before that, they have that underground test footage of them trying to the guy goes up 2 feet and explodes, and they're turn the cameras off. That's good for a laugh. It kind of reminded me of RoboCop when RoboCop 2, when they're testing the RoboCops and they're all just failing, like something like that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
Yeah, so our stakes, just in the span of like a minute in the movie, just really ratcheted up. This rich guy wants a thing?
Yeah, this rich guy wants a thing.
So, oh my God, Nazis are going to take over the U.S.
But that's all set up. Even Cliff's dislike of Hitler which at the time was before Hitler started invading other countries. You have like Neville Chamberlain, right? Kind of like the pacifist British Prime Minister. Hitler's, he's okay, I think.
You had people like Charles Lindbergh who were just flat out like pro-Hitler.
Right, and they go to see a Neville Sinclair film in the theater, and before that is a newsreel.
Herr Hitler assures the Western powers he is not massing troops at the Czech border. Here comes the Führer's latest symbol of German progress, the airship Luxembourg.
About Hitler's goodwill tour with his Zeppelins, which was real. They had Zeppelins. That was what the Hindenburg was.
Yeah.
And so it's like, instead of just ending the film where Nazis like come out of the bushes at the Griffith Observatory and just a fucking Zeppelin comes out of nowhere.
It's set up.
It's properly set up. It's flying from New York to Chicago and then making its final stop in Los Angeles. This giant Nazi Zeppelin. So it's like, okay. And Cliff's like, yeah, right, World Peace Tour. More like Peace of the World Tour. And it's like, okay. All right. Cliff knows Nazis are bad. It's not brilliant. It's just well executed.
Yes.
And it's not sloppy.
I see. It was damn sloppy.
Well, then you get that wonderful. You know who else is great in this movie? John Hughes. Terry Quinn is John Hughes. Because at the same time,
Howard.
Huh?
John Hughes directed The Breakfast Club.
At the same time, you get that wonderful scene with Howard Hughes, played by Terry Quinn.
Terry
and,
Oakland.
Terry Oakland?
Cut!
I had a couple of minor problems with the film.
Okay, what you got?
One, when Cliff puts on the waiter's uniform in the South Seas Club, rightfully he pretends to be a waiter to serve soup to Jenny in an attempt to get to talk to her in private. But then when the bad guys come in and start storming in the place, they're going after Cliff, and then he grabs a lady and says, "Mind if I cut in?" and kind of dances with her.
Mm-hmm.
Go get him.
Cutting in. Thank you.
He really should have blended in with the staff and pretended.
Cliff isn't the brightest bulb. That's less a problem with the movie and a problem with Cliff.
My second problem. We have that wonderful scene when Peavy and Howard Hughes are talking, and Howard Hughes is like, helmet with the fucking rudder on it. Why, that's genius. And Peavy says, it's just basic aviation, Howard.
Nothing to it, Howard, just basic aviation.
And then so it's like, okay, then a few minutes later, Cliff goes up to the Zeppelin to rescue Jenny.
Yeah.
He is still bumbling Cliff. He flies into some ropes and accidentally tears the fabric, the canvas on the rudder. I wanted him to land, kind of look around, look up, see the rudder, and start ripping it. Because as a pilot, he knows if he fucks with the rudder, he's gonna give them problems piloting it.
I thought literally the exact same thing when I rewatched this. I had like that. Oh, why was that a bumbling thing? He's a pilot. He knows about aviation. He's just jamming the rudder so they can't get away. They missed an opportunity.
It's
less a mistake and more a missed opportunity.
When he accidentally flies up to save Malcolm and bumps his head into the bottom of the airplane and then falls off the airplane, that's bumbling time.
But that's your first adventure scene. He's learning the ropes. But by the end, he should be the hero.
He should be a little more heroic.
Yeah.
Less bumbly, and also we want our protagonist to be a little smarter. Peavy can't do all the thinking. Cliff needed to have a moment where he does something smart. And kind of like, he does do one.
He does the gum at the end.
The ending is good.
It's a very little thing. One of my favorite little scenes or shots. It's more where shot in this movie is when Valentine, he switched sides at the end. He's fighting against the Nazis, and there's just this little moment where he's shooting at the guns and he looks over and he realizes that him and the FBI, they're both working together, fighting the Nazis. Just a little thing like, haha, we're on the same side now.
His line is, I may not make an honest buck, but I'm 100% American. And I don't work for no two-bit Nazi.
Maybe not. Look.
Up on the dome! It's him!
It's the Rocketeer!
Go get him, kid.
It's the best hero shot of all time.
Yeah. And he's got his gun, and he looks around, and Paul Sorvino says, "Go get him, kid," as he flies off towards the Zeppelin. Nobody else can do anything. They're getting away. No hope. Rocketeer. My brain went to the final demise of Neville Sinclair, and not so great looking special effect. Some dated special effects, some really awesome looking special effects. I was kind of surprised to see that ILM did the effects work on this. All the distant shots of the Rocketeer shooting up, but a lot of the flying on the green screen stuff.
There's one thing, it's not something I don't like, but it is something that makes no sense.
I might be able to help with this.
I'm okay with it, but okay. Isn't it kind of weird that Peavy and Howard Hughes just schlockily show up in a gyrocopter at the very end?
That is awesome.
It's awesome, but it makes no sense why they just chose to do that at that exact moment, precisely when they needed to be there because the Zeppelin was blowing up.
Run, Jenny!
Steady as she goes, Howard. We're only going to get one pass at this.
That was awesome. It reminded me of DuckTales. There is, though, that shot that reminds me of Return of the Jedi. It's like, they're like, ooh, hold on, Cliff.
Let's get out of here!
They have the big wide shot, and flying as just the Zeppelins burning in the background. It's like the little skiff flying away from Jabba's palace is exploding. I'm not sure if it was Peavy or Howard Hughes, but somebody kind of took a little look, and it said 4 a.m. Griffith Observatory. Cliff wrote it down.
Yeah.
So somebody knew they were going to be there, set up. Why they decided to fly a little plane to rescue a man who had a rocket pack? Don't know, but it made for a great ending.
So Howard Hughes, with his binoculars, saw the Zeppelin. And so then he turns to his best test pilot and says, "Get me that Peavy guy I don't know. We're going to take the experimental gyroplane."
Peavy insisted on going. These are cutscenes.
Okay, these are scenes that were cut from the movie. Okay.
He says, "Howard, I'm a pilot myself. You haven't been behind the stick in 20 years, baby." Yeah, but Cliff is my friend. And he got me out of a jam.
We awkwardly share a house together.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Threw in a case of the not gays.
Yeah.
What do you know about women, Peeve?
It's 1991,
Yeah.
I doubt Peavy and people would have thought Peavy and Cliff were lovers, but
You hadn't had a date since 1932.
Flora Maxwell. There was no point in dating nobody after her.
Peavy, you haven't been on a date with a woman in 5 years. Oh.
After Maybelle, or whatever her name was, there's no point.
After Maybelle. I should have said yes. At the end, Howard Hughes shows up and gives Cliff Secord a free plane to fly in the Nationals and takes off, and they pull the sticker off and it says Pilot Cliff Secord. And Jenny is there.
It was the closest I'll ever get to heaven, Mr. Hughes. Well, maybe not.
There needed to be something with her, some kind of closure with her, like, Jenny, so-and-so from the agency called.
It would be nice if she got a speaking part.
Yes, you because of your work on the Neville Sinclair film, they're reshooting all those scenes, and you're going to play the princess, replacing Neville Sinclair with Cary Grant. So, they couldn't finish the picture because Neville Sinclair had flaming
because
debris.
They couldn't
fall
finish
on
the
him.
picture because Neville Sinclair was a Nazi.
No, nobody knew that. It was in the
That was
paper.
covered up. I know.
He was covered up. He died by flaming debris landing on his tour car. But yeah, Jenny, like you have Millie run out from the restaurant. Jenny, it's Hollywood. They're on the phone for you. They want you to play the part of the princess. I got to reshoot half the movie. You're gonna star with Cary Grant.
I agree. That is actually is a big flaw. Yeah.
But it's time for her to get home and start making babies.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true.
I mean, it's 1991 when the film was made, but the film took place in 1938. Cliff should have ended with Cliff being Jenny. You had your fun in Hollywood.
Time to make some babies.
Now get home and make babies and dinner.
I need dinner.
That's how it probably would have ended in 1938. So maybe, but for her character, a solid character, damsel in distress, like you said, serialized kind of movie.
Yeah.
Fine, but it would have been nice if she got a piece of the pie too at the end, not just Cliff.
Would that you drink of my lips?
Thanks. Don't mind if I do.
Who basically got everyone killed.
She got a nice pension after Cliff died in the war.
Okay. Yeah.
He probably would have signed up. He had a taste of action, so he would have signed up for World War II, and he would have died as a fighter pilot.
You know what? I'm bathing in warm, non-existent nostalgia over the sequel. 4 years later, it opens with B-52 bombers, Here comes Cliff Secord on a rocket, shooting past him.
You'd start it with him already having the rocket, not him just being a regular old fighter pilot. And then something comes up where they need to rebuild the rocket because it's a mission that only one man can do, but it's way up on that mountain.
We got to take out that Nazi radar.
We've got a pilot who flew one of these rockets. His name was Cliff Secord. Get him in here.
He's a bumbling fool.
We've got a mission for him, a special mission that only he can do.
I mean, the possibilities are endless.
There's a mountain in the Alps with a Nazi fortress.
However, while we're on this subject, I think we've sung the praises of The Rocketeer enough. I can't say enough wonderful things about this movie. But in terms of sequel, Cliff Secord's adventures, although I think I might have seen enough of Cliff Secord. I'm not particularly fond of that character. I think he's a good protagonist. Like the rudder scene, he needed to be a little more intelligent or clever on top of just being heroic. I think there was rumors somewhat recently.
A few years ago, I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, and I have not looked into this at all, but I have a feeling that it was troll bait.
Yeah.
Because it was, they're making a Rocketeer sequel or a reboot, and it's going to be a black woman as the Rocketeer.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, personally, I love this idea, and I'm going to get into it because it got my brain going on all sorts of different things. I have a feeling how this occurred. Do you know how clickbait happens?
I know what it is.
Here's how it happened.
Okay.
At some random moment, a press junket was happening, right?
Uh-huh.
And it was Jennifer Connelly or Bill Campbell or whoever was sitting in a press junket for some other movie that they just made. And the interviewer said, "You remember you were in The Rocketeer?" Yeah. What if they remade The Rocketeer and they put a woman in the role, specifically a minority woman? Would you be okay with that? Then they say,
it's a great idea.
That's a great idea. I think diversity is wonderful and important nowadays. No one's going to say, nah, it should be a white guy. So, the second Jennifer Connelly or Bill Campbell or Alan Arkin or Joe Johnston or anyone says, oh, yeah, that would be great, yeah. What's the next question? Joe Johnston confirms Rocketeer sequel starring black woman. Then someone writes an article, someone comes up with some fucking conceptual art, and it gets posted on comicbookmovie.com. It gets on Twitter. They're making a Rocketeer sequel starring a black lady.
Gazorbo.com.
Gazorbo.com. Yes. Gazorp.com. Yes. And then everyone clicks on it, clicks on it, clicks on it, clicks on it. What are the comments? It shouldn't be a minority lady, and everyone's screaming and blah, 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 and then someone makes money off clicks. That's probably what happened. But I got to thinking about it, and I'm like, I don't want to see another Cliff Secord adventure.
Yeah.
One of the finalities of Jenny's character was she stuffed the plans, the blueprints for the rocket pack down her shirt,
yes,
down her dress, and she gives him to Peavy at the end. And he's like, oh, hey, what's this? Blah, blah, blah. And which is supposed to mean that Peavy's going to build another one for the sequel that never happened.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, okay, a black lady is the Rocketeer. She needs an afro. This needs to take place in the 70s because you still have that bygone era. It can't take place nowadays. It has to take place.
Would you go like 70s or like 60s?
I'm going 1977.
Okay.
New York City, the famous Summer of Sam. It's the year Star Wars came out. It's the year Elvis died. There was a famous heat wave in New York City, and for some reason I picture a black lady with an afro as the Rocketeer. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, where does she get? And I haven't thought too much about this.
Yeah,
you and I can brainstorm this plot, all we want later. But I was like, okay, where does she get the rocket pack? Maybe Peavy took that design and said, Howard Hughes, let's build this. I've got some ideas on how to make it better. And then they started building it. Because right after the Rocketeer ended, World War II started. So maybe the government came in and said, start building this rocket, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, nothing ever happened with it. Peavy and Howard Hughes built a new prototype that's maybe has some little changes to it.
When did Howard Hughes die?
That's the wonderful thing. Howard Hughes died in 1976.
Oh my God.
I looked it up.
Oh my God, that's perfect.
That is the time that Dr. Joseph E. Hemchick appeared in the hallway going into the room in the basement where the body has lain since yesterday afternoon. Newsmen learned everyone is interested in confirming the death of Howard Hughes.
And so I'm just picturing like just a totally different style of movie.
Oh yeah.
Not World War II with Cliff Secord running around, but totally different character, totally different setting, totally different time era.
Well, you make a 1938 movie in theme, like stylistically, it feels like a 1938 movie. If you do 77, you have to do something that feels more contemporary to that.
And I picture a scene where the woman walks into Studio 54, and it's like, and she's got her full Rocketeer costume on. She takes off her helmet. An afro comes out, and she's looking around, and then she walks past like Andy Warhol. He's like, "Ooh, what is that beautiful work of art on your back, honey?" I just like crazy New York City art scene in 1977, and I think there was a power outage, a famous blackout.
Anybody else going across the street? Come on!
With traffic lights out, volunteers pitched in to direct traffic. People help people. It also brought out the worst in New Yorkers. Neighborhoods throughout the city exploded into violence. More than 1,600 stores were ransacked, looted, and destroyed.
Instead of flying around, rural, the outskirts of Los Angeles.
Kind of skyscrapers.
Skyscrapers, yeah. And just a totally different storyline.
Some kind of like corrupt cops, something.
Yes.
Her brother was wrongfully accused of something. Yeah. She's got to prove his innocence.
Yeah, just something where, and then you have a superhero element. I mean, it would be a little dark for children, I think.
I don't think that matters at this point.
Kind of bump it to that PG-13 level where you have some, she's saying sucker. Like a blaxploitation film.
Yes.
The blackout couldn't have come at a worse time for the city, which already was in the throes of financial crisis. Crime was at an all-time high. The streets were filthy, and a serial killer known as Son of Sam held the city in the grips of fear.
Her grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman, or her father, or whatever.
Okay,
yeah.
Her father was a Tuskegee Airman. She wants to learn how to fly, but they say you can't.
Yeah.
No,
You're a
black.
woman.
You're a black.
You're a black woman. You can't.
You can't fly. You can't join our elite airfield, pilots training program. You just don't have it, lady. To the top of the Chrysler Building.
To the penthouse of the rich white villain.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But this, it's. I mean, it'd be fairly risky, but.
It would work.
Not an actual blaxploitation film, but
just
in flavoring and in the style of, because that was the era of the blaxploitation film. You have a solid lead protagonist who's likable and smart and heroic.
Yeah.
But it's just more of the flavor of the style and the settings, going from orange farms in California and Hollywood over to New York City, gritty New York City in the 70s, Times Square, and just the craziness of that time. Well, Rich, it's time to check in on our tomato soup test. Did Cliff Secord's note float to the surface? No.
No. Now the movie sucks.
You must let me have this dance.
There's no music.
I love when Neville Sinclair says, "Let's go dance." And he says, "There's no music." He says, "I hear music."
I hear music.
Hard cut. The score comes in. Here comes a Rocketeer. I mean, they did a fucking fantastic job making this movie, and I am so sorry that it flopped.
It's a love letter to an era gone by. That didn't catch on with the young folks at the time. It caught on with me. Everything that came out, that stuff like Terminator 2, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, the movie I remember most fondly that summer was The Rocketeer.
Different places where there was what? High altitude. Beans cooking at sea level versus 7,000 foot versus 10,000 foot are gonna cook totally different. Now, if you're in them places like that, I like to soak my beans, like put them in an ice chest, get the water good and cold, pour the beans in there, let them soak overnight, but make sure that water stays cold because you don't want them beans to sour. And then you can rinse them, drain them off, go back to starting them at that. But I have also cooked them really slow from like 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night with just a little bitty fire and get them done. But folks, a lot of people soak them beans. I don't see a need in it till you get up there at a very high altitude. So we done got our kidney beans in there, our pinto beans. Now traditionally, old Cookie probably wouldn't have had no ham hock. I do love a ham hock, but he would have probably used salt pork or some old jowls or some old fatty bacon that maybe he had left over there, some side meat. So we're gonna chunk him in there. And guess what we got here? We have got us some guajillo chilies. And we're gonna break out the, what you call it, Jen? What do you call this, remember? Yeah, but there's another name for it that I can't remember. Yeah, I'm gonna call it the masher. So them chilies have been roasted some, and I just want you to just take them and just grind them up a little more, because when you break these down like that and go ahead and put them in there with them beans, we're gonna get some of that good old rich traditional flavor, but we're gonna get some of that good smoky flavor that it brings out too. And they ain't gotta be finely ground. I just want them where they're in pretty small pieces, because that hot water gonna work a number on them too. So get them in there, a garlic clove, and it is a big one of them elephant ear garlics. And old Cookie had one of these hanging, I'm pretty sure right there, an old hash knife. This is the best chopping device I've ever seen in my life, but I like to mash them garlic, give them a little bitty mash in there. Now I just like to chop this up sort of best you can. We're just gonna chunk it right in there. Good to go. Now, let's talk about onions. There's white onions, there's yellow onion, there's purple onion. Some people call them a red onion. They've always been purple to me. I love a white onion in beans. Now, I've used a Vidalia onion some in beans, but I prefer a good white onion that you're gonna put in there. And a lot of people, when they get them onions and they're gonna use them, they're gonna chop them up in some little bitty pieces. So just don't make them so small that you can't find them in a pot of beans. And I think a white onion holds up really well and really gives some natural flavor. So 2 onions is what we're using today with 4 pounds of beans. And I like to use 2 jalapenos. Now, Shan know if it's me, I ain't gonna get the seeds, the stems, nothing out of them. And that's the way it's gonna be today, because this is for me and my friends, and we like our food to bite back. Now, if you don't want yours that hot, peel that stem and them seeds out there, you'll be good to go. You won't even know it's got a pepper in it. We got the onions in there, we got the jalapeno, we've got the dried chilies in there. And what else do we have in there, Shan? Do you remember what else we might have snuck in there? Some beans and some garlic, yeah. And folks, I love to put some cilantro in mine, but not fresh. Now, a lot of people tell me, why don't you use fresh cilantro? To me, it tastes like soap. To a lot of people, it tastes like soap. Shan, she be loving it, but not so much me. I love to use dried. So I'm gonna get me probably I'd say nearly 1/4 of a cup for 2 pounds of beans, which is, the wind is blowing. So we're gonna put about that much in there. And I want y'all to meet me at the fire. Ooh, look at what I got here. I have got the Cadillac of all Berthas. Me and Rich and the good folks at Hasty Baked Grills there in Tulsa have went off the old Bertha pattern and made this one. Some of you might have seen it in our fried onion video that come out, the Oklahoma fried onion burger. Whoo, them things is good. Cookie didn't have one of these. So on some ranches, early 1900s, late 1890s, you might have seen another little wagon hooked to the back end of that one, which was called a pup wagon, and there might have been a little old 2-hole stove in there, and you just dump it out and cook with it. Now, a lot of them didn't have it, but some did. I like this because, folks, I ain't bending over on the ground, letting everything blow in my gravy and eggs. We designed this just like the original old Bertha. I'm gonna take an eye out of it because Bertha has really, really hot, and then when you take an eye out, it's got, I'm gonna get some kind of that hot. So we're just gonna put this over, and we're just gonna let it begin to simmer, and then we're gonna let it begin to boil. We're gonna give it one little stir right now, and some of you said, wait, he seasoned that. Well, folks, I don't like to season my beans till they start cooking pretty good, because if you just put it all in there at one time and keep cooking it, you done boil most of the flavor out of it. So we're gonna stir them up, let them come to a good rolling boil, and I'll meet you back over here at the fire and I'll show you what else is going in them. Well, old Bertha has done her job. We've been on about probably 10 or 12 minutes, and we have got us a good low simmering boil, as you can see in there. And let me pull them up. You can still distinguish between a kidney bean and a pinto bean. And guess what, folks? It is time to season at this point right now. We ain't gonna season at the first, remember, because you're gonna boil some of that away. Now, traditionally, I wouldn't be using like chili powder and all this stuff, but I'm sort of jazzing these up maybe the way old Cookie had so many years ago, because he wouldn't have a lot of what I had. He wouldn't have original Kent Rollins seasoning nor the mesquite. So we're gonna add probably about, I would say, a tablespoon and a half of chili powder, 2 tablespoons of smoked paprika, about 1 tablespoon of cumin, if we can get it in there for the wind blowing. And then we're gonna use some of our mesquite seasoning, which has got some ancho chili in it. Now, folks be telling me, oh, is that really spicy? No, it's just the right blend to give you a little bit of a touch of heat, but also a lot of that smoky flavor. Probably about a tablespoon, and then about a tablespoon of our original. Now, we will season these to our seasoning at the end to make sure that it's just right. And you notice I got me a pot here that has got some water in it that stays hot. So when you add beans to water as they boil,
add water to beans.
Remember, when you're adding water to beans as they boil, and we want them to come to a boil and just watch them, just let them simmer there, but you need to put hot water back in there when you're adding it, not cold water. Ain't no sense in shocking them little fellers. You done got them all hot and warm and toasty in that bathtub. Don't be pouring some cold water on them. Keep you some hot water going. So we got her stirred. We're gonna let them cook till they get, that was hot. I just want y'all to know when you pick that up, that was hot. We're gonna let them get really good and tender, and I'll show you a trick there to last. When you pull that bean up out of there and the skin cracks, we're getting pretty close.